Okay, welcome to this morning's Saturday morning property show. This is all about selling in winter. This is probably the best time and how to play this season's strengths to move home in the spring. You're maybe too late by this time if you're looking to move in before Christmas. It's going to take a while. Conveyancing takes round about 3 to 4 months once you've actually got an offer. An offer on average, there's over 1,000 properties on the market in Fife in particular, right across the board, across Scotland as well. It's round about a 2 month average to sell a property in terms of the demand, in terms of supply overall. So some might have a wee bit longer to wait, some might have a wee bit earlier to go ahead as well. So if you want to move home in the spring, winter is definitely time to get live on the market. But does anyone actually buy at this time of year? Well, yeah, they do. And it's true. It's probably the best time of year, actually. I know we say this every single time, but now is the best time to sell your house.
The time is now.
Best time of year to sell, and it's predominantly down to the fact that a lot of people are convinced that they need to wait off until the spring, until the summer, until the gardens are in full bloom, because that's when people will be ready to buy their house. Unfortunately, everybody's waiting for the same time, so you have a huge amount of stock going on at these points in time. You've still got the same amount of buyers, really, in relative terms. Therefore, you're going to have an oversupply. You know what happens to prices when oversupply comes in? It goes down. So winter is usually the best time to sell because the buyers are still there, supply is restricted. So what happens with prices? They go up potentially. And so it's true that activity levels are lower at this point in year, mainly down to people waiting until spring, as I said, to put their homes in the market for sale. But it gives winter sellers a number of unsung advantages. Sophie, what are these unsung advantages that we've got to think about then?
Well, you've touched on it slightly then, but obviously there is fewer homes on the market. In the updates that we've been doing weekly, you can obviously start to see that in the numbers that less is coming to market, but we're still seeing buyers out there. There is active buyers on the market. But it means that there's more eyes on yours. Obviously, for the biggest online audience, with daily visits to Rightmove. Obviously, we love a statistic. And with daily visits to Rightmove, 25 million over the holidays. People are sitting, they're at home a wee bit more. They're in these spaces. They also might be cooped up and actually thinking this is just too small for me and start looking because they want to move and upsize because there's too many people under their feet. And also another obviously advantage is only the most motivated buyers brave the elements to kind of come out on viewings. They get themselves all wrapped up and really get out there, which means interest tends to be more, serious. There's less kind of tire kickers and kind of people just out for a nose on a nice day that they're coming out because they want to. Less window shoppers will say. You can then also kind of use that to your advantage and make it more of add the magic to it. Obviously, the frosty months, like I was at a pre-portal earlier today, for example, and I walked in and they had the fire on in the conservatory and it was absolutely, it was beautiful. And I was like, I want that. And when you're doing your viewings, make one absolutely every time. And I was like, if only you could feel how cozy it is through the camera, because it was just perfect having that on in the background. So we can use it to our advantage to help set, obviously, the atmosphere of that seasonal warmth. It's almost like impossible to resist, if you like. So there is so many different advantages. So planning ahead, you're obviously to move home in spring, then this blog that we're doing just now will help you understand
that. Definitely for you. So it does set the mood, and I think that's what it is. And by we talk about the mood, it really is the feeling, isn't it? Yeah, people buy on feelings and emotions. They don't technically just. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, when you do your search, what do? How many bedrooms? What price point is it? The search is done. It comes up with a choice. Obviously, you know the choice. So what's going to differentiate you from anyone else? I think that's the key here. Richard, what kind of does differentiate? I mean, what gets people to click through? What sort of things are you... What sort of things in your mind would get people to click through? Just in general, like video or anything like that, when you're sitting on that front page.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the things that resonate with people when they're looking as things that catch their eye, obviously, like you're saying, Sophie, you're doing a video there and you've got the fire burning. I mean, that comes through in a video a lot more than it does on just a picture. And people, like we always say, make decisions on emotions or how they relate to that and how it makes them feel. And you'll instantly get that through the video. when and that's obviously pre-portal stage. That'll be on social medias and things, and that is just it's setting that whole scene and creating that feeling for people where they could actually then begin to see themselves actually living there. That's when you're going to catch somebody.
Yeah, Craig, how important is a video walkthrough then? Is it just kind of like the same as what photographs are, or does it add a different dimension to the whole thing?
I think you've really hit a good point there. It's a different dimension. Photograph can be quite one-dimensional, can be quite landscape essentially, and you're not really capturing the emotion that's going to come with a video, talking you through the home, going through the features of the property as they are, and allowing you to really kind of bond or create an emotional feel to that video and then ultimately the property. Yeah,
that makes sense, doesn't it? It's but it is the talk up rather than the silent movie approach, because most tend to do silent movies, and while it looks absolutely fantastic and the music's probably quite emotive, it actually makes you feel really good. Does it really add? You've got to ask yourself, does it really add any more value other than just what the photographs would have done anyway?
Yeah, so I would certainly say it does. Sorry, Richard.
No, you're fine.
I would certainly say it does. It creates a whole other range of viewing opportunities as well as just the photos that anyone can really go and see. It captures somebody has genuine interest to sit and watch the whole video from start to finish, understand the local amenities, understand what's really behind the property, as opposed to just the mask that everyone can make look good. The video will really show you the actual condition of the home and how it really, really stands out compared to the photos.
Do you think do you think, Richard, it's a good qualification tool for people that are actually looking? It's maybe like an initial. It's like doing an initial viewing, sort of, an initial viewing before anybody physically gets in the door.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're doing, like you say, the talk up, and you've got that. It feels almost interactive when you're doing the talk up and you're doing these videos and walkthrough, and the people watching that will feel like you're talking to them directly and explaining to them the benefits and possibly things that might not suit them and will definitely suit them, and that's how they'll resonate with it. And yeah, like you're saying, it's almost like a pre-qualification stage for the buyers before they even come through the door to do the actual viewing.
Yeah. So Sophie, then, if we go into a wee bit further then and talk about how do we get people to feel that instant coziness and in a property and actually feel good about where they are? Is there a pattern for this or formula for this, or how could anybody approach this that wants to actually sell their house and they possibly maybe have to do the viewings themselves? What would they do to get that? What tips have you got for them?
Okay, so tips, if obviously you are going to be doing winter viewings. So it's all about making your viewers feel instantly cozy, especially if they've just come in from outside, they're freezing, they want to feel that instant warmth and comfortable, so that they really do relax into the space, almost defrost, as I say, they've been out in the cold, and really enjoy their visit. So keep the heating on, keep it on, low, or even invest in one of the smart thermostats that you can control remotely, for a warm and welcoming temperature. Like, for example, I walked into that one this morning and the heat just hit you, and instantly I didn't want to leave. I was like, just leave me here all day.
Is there a point though where the heat gets maybe overpowering after a while, and maybe that's why you were saying about keeping it on low, just in case it does get, because you will get that initial burst, won't you? And then sometimes for some viewers it might get uncomfortable going round after a while. Maybe they've got their jackets on still and that.
Potentially. I mean, I can't speak because I'm always cold, so I appreciated it. But yeah, potentially, maybe. Another thing to think of as well is if they're coming from outside. If we're in Scotland, so it's probably going to be raining. Leave a mat out for buyers so that they can obviously wipe their feet, a shoe tray perhaps, or a dedicated area for their kind of damp and muddy footwear.
That's good advice.
You don't want it traipsing through your home as well, especially if you're going to be doing.
Should you use foot covers then? Should you maybe buy foot covers off Amazon or something like that and leave them at the door in a wee basket?
You can do. We've got them, and we carry them back with us in our, in our cars and everything. So yeah, you can do invest, or even ask your agent if they've got anything to give to you, because we've got boxes of them. But absolutely, can do that. Because especially if you're doing back-to-back viewings, you've got people coming one after another. You've not really got time if somebody does have muddy footwear to clean up behind them. So you just obviously want it to be perfect.
Well, it's the classic. It's the classic uncomfortableness, isn't it? I mean, you know, I don't know about you, but when I've done viewings before myself, just personally, just looking at a house as a buyer, and you walk in the door and somebody says, "Could you take your shoes off?" Then you get to the back door and you think, "Well, how am I going to go out to the garden? I've got to go way back and get my shoes now." Or you maybe walk onto a tiled floor and you actually feel quite cold in your feet, and it maybe gives you it hits your brain, and it gives you maybe a negative connotation. So maybe foot covers are really probably the essential thing to preserve that, rather than actually insisting people take their shoes off. And as well, the one that I always encountered was when you had an elderly person, they're not exactly in a position to take their shoes off and put them back on quite easly. So I often found, like, and I hate to say it, like, give you an analogy, I felt like I was Prince Charming sometimes, and putting their shoes on and off. It's like I think one lady actually mentioned that. It's like I feel like Cinderella.
Make sure there's somewhere for them if they do want to take the jacket off, especially obviously as you mentioned, if they maybe get too hot during the viewing. Make sure there's somewhere for them to put their coat, their jacket, their belongings, and then that way as well they start to relax into the space more. Another point as well, if you've got, like I was saying earlier, if you've got an open fire or a log burner, light it up, for that, not only the warmth from it, but also the display. Like the one this morning, you could hear it crackling in the background in the video, and it was just perfect. Put it on a timer if need be, if you've got the option.
That's really quite an emotive sound, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost right up there by hearing the sea. So you can hear the sea, and you maybe hear the leaves rustling as well, and then you've got a fire crackling, and it does set the scene, doesn't it? And probably then, Craig, coming back to that about the fact that we talked about the photographs and the videos, that's probably why the talk up in the video is probably essential, like Sophie was doing,
Yeah, it's a great feature if you've got something like that in a home, to really capture that on video, allow people to create that emotion. As we've said, a cozy home that somebody would love to move into. If we can capture that on a video with, like, so the sound of waves crashing or the crackle of a fire behind you, it's only adding to people's emotion towards the property.
Yeah. So Sophie, what other top tips have we got on that sort of subject about being cozy then?
So not only are we talking about warmth, in actual heat wise, but look at adding warmth with your interiors, your textiles. Look at adding maybe soft, fluffy sheepskins and natural wool throws, and also look at maybe the colorings. Is there, what colors have you got? Is it all just completely bare white and quite clinical, or have you maybe got like a pop of color, whether it be that a deep sapphire blue, emerald greens, ruby reds, for example, kind of classic. So not only adding the warmth in terms of heat, adding the warmth in terms of your textiles, and just, again, especially if we're adding in blankets and throws, you can then envision yourself kind of on the sofa, fire in the background, cozied up with your cushions, your throw. Again, it just adds to that kind of lazy Sunday afternoon in the winter months, and you really start to envision yourself.
It's kind of the colour scheme of the burnt oranges and that as well, and it matches just with the period of coming out of autumn, and outside. So it actually works well. And alongside maybe you've got a log. I mean, you don't really need to have a log burning fire. Here's a top tip: actually going to YouTube. If you go into YouTube, you can actually look up log burning fire, and you put it on your television and you can run it. And you got the crackling sounds and everything out of it. So it does a nice trick psychologically when people walk into the room. It still gives them that impression. It still gives them that feeling, even though it's on your television.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, because these kind of things, they hit your receptors, and it's like it makes you obviously react to the atmosphere and things as well. I think it's important that you see, like, I love what real log burners and things create, but they could make it too hot as well. So you need to watch and keep the temperature like comfortable and not too hot. That's something to watch out for.
Yeah, and then on the back of that, then you've got things like you've obviously got the smell of a log burner, and then you could probably dare I say, get up everybody's nose in a good way, and use naturally scented candles, maybe of that period, of that time. What could we be thinking about? Mulled wine. They do candles like that,
cinnamon,
don't they?
nutmeg.
Yeah, that's it. Cinnamon, nutmeg. Yeah. And the cedar and probably spruce and pine. Orange is definitely a really good one. I always like vanilla. Vanilla's a time I tried and tested definite scent, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of works every time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think for that, it's the old adage. A really good top tip out of that then actually is if you look how people are programmed and marketed on adverts, and you look at what Comfort or Lenore is selling, or Febreze, what type of scents or smells are they selling? And that's kind of what's in season, or that's what's in the majority of, because they're spending millions upon millions of pounds marketing to get and testing to get the right smells. It will enthuse people to use their product and their brand. So it makes absolute sense to maybe take a leaf out of their book and work out. I tell you what, I'll maybe just get something that's along the lines of theirs, just a similar smell, and it kind of works. So that's a big winner for me. The classic examples of that. And if you're struggling to clean your house in a quicks, you're like, oh God, I've got to clean the house all the time. A wee top tip is just actually take Febreze or something like that and spray it on all the plug holes in the toilets and in the bath and stuff like that. And it'll just aromatize right around the room. Remember, if you're spraying anything though, if you're doing an air freshener before anybody walks around the property, spray it down to the corners. Don't put it up in the air. Because if somebody walks right in at the back of that and they've got a wee aversion to the maybe got the asthma or anything like that, that'll be quite abrasive to their breathing, and then it'll cause a problem. So spray it down at the ground in the corners. But the Febreze thing, and I always used to use Flash. It was a cleaner's trick, wasn't it? Every time you walked into somewhere, you'd get Pine Flash, and you just spray it in a toilet bowl, you spray it in a plug hole or an overflow or something like that, and it would be a perfect smell. And the immediate response when people walk in, even though your toilet is bogging, there's a play on words, even though your toilet is bogging or smelling, or doesn't look great, it actually, in people's minds, they actually think it's clean.
Yeah, the pine smell makes people automatically think,
think clean, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that then takes me then. What other things? Well, probably daylight's quite important at this time of year because it does get dark very, very quick, maybe towards 2 o'clock, and we're goosed for viewings and stuff like that. There's no point in doing a viewing for somebody at 5 or 6 o'clock at night because maybe they could look round the house, but they're never going to see the back garden. So they're really probably not going to be in a position to make an actual offer until they actually see the back garden again. So you tend to find, even though you think the market's slow, what happens is the viewings go from day to day because people are at work during the day and they can only get away at night. It goes from day to weekend. Hence the market kind of, you think it's going slower, but it's only because of that restriction on when people can actually do viewings. But there's still all the buyers out there that are interested in your property. Maybe I'll ask you this, Craig. How important is it to amplify the daylight at this time of year?
I think you've hit a good point. Nobody really wants to be viewing a property in the dark or seeing a garden via a head torch before they make a purchase. So I think we really need to make the most of the hours that are available to us. It's also a time to utilise setting sun, for example, or at later times where the sun is coming down over a nice garden area. We can really capture that autumn, winter crispness of the sun, and it can really play to your advantage as well. But really making sure that we use those daylight hours accordingly is more important than ever at this time of year.
Yeah. So what sort of tips would you be doing maybe to the house then to emphasise and encourage that daylight to come in?
Well, as well as using the daylight hours, we can do simple things to bring as much light into the property as possible. Cleaning windows, making sure everything's nice and clear for the light to really shine through and to show the flow of natural light, even at this time of year, as well as anything that overshadows your property or the windows around your property, bushes, foliage, etc. Get them cleared back and make sure that light is really going to be able to access the windows and not be blocked.
Probably the biggest challenge is in the coastal properties. It's, you're sitting in the coast and you're sitting in Broughty Ferry, maybe the coastal ones on the front of Dundee, St Andrews Coast, the East Newt Coast, Leavenmouth Coast, where you're getting quite a lot of dirt coming away from, the wind and everything from the beach areas. So yeah, it does make sense, doesn't it? And yeah, you kind of think to yourself, is it no common sense? But we all know the thing about common sense is probably not that common. I think.
Not that common.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what other
that.
things? Do you know? Does this then come into the fact that maybe we should be looking at blinds, curtains, opening them all up? You know, what's your thoughts on that, Craig?
I think internally there's a few things that can really help to play to your advantage. As you say, roll up blinds, open the curtains as wide as we can get them. Don't have anything that's going to overshadow the rooms in your property, and give the idea of space as much as we can by opening it up and letting light through. As well as that, relocate things in the property. I think most people in their bedroom per se would have a standing mirror, bedside mirror, etc. Use these to really amplify or redirect light back into rooms if possible, allowing you to get the flow of light through your property much better, at this time of year.
So this is then about line of sight as well, because we used to talk about this all the time, Richard, about the fact that you maybe rearrange your furniture so the line of sight, and it makes the room more spacious overall. And then when you talk about the light coming in, the natural light coming in, yeah, you're absolutely right. I can't disagree with that. I mean, getting the right mirrors in the right places could make a huge difference. It's maybe beneficial then to open doors if you've got a dark hallway, and possibly the other thing as well, and we might touch on it later on, is my top tip is make sure your light bulbs are daylight light bulbs.
Yeah, not these
so in other words, they emit the light, it's not noticeable, and it looks like the normal brightness in the room. So they're called daylight bulbs, and it's Philips that designed it as a daylight bulb. And they're low energy bulbs, but they're not the low energy as the old style ones where you have to put them on and wait half an hour for them to heat up. And it's like, I've got the light in the room now. And it's like you walk in, and you can get caught out with that, can't you, Richard? With the lighting.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think lighting's such an important thing, and as you said about creating that realignment in the room, and as Craig says about using the mirrors and things to reflect and make use of the natural light in the room, and again, obviously your light bulbs and things, because as it gets to that dusky part of the day, then the daylight bulbs make it so much better than these old yellow bulbs are terrible.
Probably they're more beneficial then when you've got smaller windows.
Yeah.
Because the smaller windows, especially in the older style houses where, well, they never had big massive windows because they never knew how to manufacture them. I'm talking about the ones that are about 200 and 300 years old, possibly in the East Neuk, possibly in St Andrews, possibly in Broughty Ferry, where they've been there for years and years and years. They're proper stone built properties, but they built them with the small windows because they really couldn't afford to put big massive windows in. Because I don't think the manufacturing capabilities were there at the time. Or, the case to put, glass in, because glass was, I don't know about you, but I always remember glass was wafer thin. And you still have some of these old country houses. They've got, the windows have still got that glass, and it's almost like if you touch it, you can break it. It's kind of like that. So the small windows limit the natural light, and adding possibly as to take up what you were saying, Craig, about the light coming in, that sheen to the walls. Maybe a satin paint and white or a pale neutral can actually really lift things up. So these simple tricks can actually make a real difference to generate surprising amounts of extra light. One of the most important factors on probably every buyer's shopping list, isn't it? Just it's the natural light. I mean, could you imagine the difference if you walk into a room, it's dark, and you walk into the exact same room, but it's a lot lighter? It would make a fundamental difference, wouldn't it, Sophie?
Oh, absolutely. It makes a real difference. Again, the property that I was at earlier today, you'd be surprised. They've actually got the walls painted black, and the walls are black, but actually with the windows being one so big and so bright in the positioning as well, they had the lamps on. And actually, I said that in the video, you'd be surprised with how dark the walls are. It is still a really bright room, and it does make a real difference to it. Something else to just note though, as well, in terms of like lamps and bulbs, something that people forget is obviously we all dust in a way. People forget to dust their actual bulbs, and there's like 3 centimeters of like dust sitting on the bulb on your lamps, but also on your actual light fitting, and that'll be making a difference as well. So you think you've got the great bulb in, but there's 3 centimeters of dust sitting on it, and it's like shadowing it. So make sure you're dusting your light bulbs as well.
This is probably where you put your light on for the first time in a long time, and then it ends up emitting that weird smell, and it's the dust. It's the same with radiators as well at this time of year. You know, when you switch your radiators on, you're heating on for the first time, and you put them up full blast because you're trying to get the house hot, and it's not normally what you do. You tend to find you get that smell that comes off the radiators, and it might be quite off-putting for some people, which is why it's important to use the proper sort of air fresheners and stuff like that to really set your property off. This is when we come to lighting. Then, you know, so you know, what could we say about then lighting? I mean, how important is it then about how to use lighting, and what sort of tips could we be giving people out there that are maybe starting for the first time, selling their house for the first time, or considering selling their house for the first time? What sort of tips could we be giving them, Richard?
Yeah, lighting is so important, and there's nothing more inviting. Do you know, when it's on that cold winters? Do you know when we're losing light 2-3 o'clock in the day here at this time? So when it gets but viewings are still taking place. So at that time of day, when you look at a doorway and it glows with, do you know, that kind of welcome aura, then it gives that kind of promise of that homely, kind of heartening hug when you walk into the home. Do you know? And there's one close by to me, and I see it when I walk the dog, and they do it every year, and they've just got it back out. They've got the big lantern hanging next to the door with the electric candles in it, and it just looks brilliant in the dusky evening. So that's really something. It's all about curb appeal and that first initial reaction to your doorway and actually the entrance into the home. But I mean, that's not the only way you could kind of seduce buyers as such with the power of light.
Yeah.
Once you're inside, you know, swap out the cold white bulbs that we've got and use the actual daylight bulbs like we spoke about. You know, soften tones and things, obviously, with the replacements of that. So that makes it a lot better. That ambience kind of, I think, is what I'm trying to get to. And they're often the missing element for elevating that cold feeling room, to bring it into the kind of warmer feeling. If you've not got log burners and fires and things like that, you could use light to create that, rather than obviously having the actual log burner or whatever generating heat.
You often get to an edge of a room, don't you? You walk into a room and the light's pretty good, but you actually see in certain corners of the rooms that it's actually quite dark. Is there something we could do about that? You know, can we do something about that?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a dark corner away over it. And sometimes you've got bigger rooms, do you know, it's quite hard. So use like floor standing lamps and things as well, like Sophie was talking about in this property that they've got. They've obviously used really good tips. They've obviously used the light properly, having the lamps in certain areas to light up those corners, even with painted black walls. And you could then you could take them with you when you move, if you have to maybe purchase one or two to create that, just to get the right listing and the right feeling for your viewers. So lamps are a very important thing. Do you know, it's do you know these wee fairy lights and things, do you know, and plain, or maybe just like a soft white look, you get them in all these decorative jars and vases and things as well. These could light up certain areas, and do you know, around the mantelpiece or in these alcoves and properties and things as well, just to light that area up, rather than it being really dark and kind of dreary in the corner, or indeed around the mirror as well. So as well as reflecting natural light, there's light around that reflected out from these small bulbs and lights.
So I'm going to speak to you about this straight away, because you're the one that usually does this all the time in your house. It's like, is that then you've got to use things like the bulbs you get in like wine bottles and jars and stuff like that. Is that the type of thing you use, Richard?
Yeah, I do actually.
There you go. There's a surprise. Yeah. Oh, there's no surprise, isn't there?
But these are that, but they're really good ways of. I've actually got one sat on my drinks tray in the corner, and it lights up. So there you go. Well,
there you go. There's a dispensation, because there's a drinks tray, isn't it? Find it easily. Yeah. As long as that's lit, it doesn't matter about anything else in the house. As long as that bit's lit.
But it does work, and it does light up certain, obviously, areas in the house. These wee lights, and they're nice and decorative, fairly inexpensive, and create that right feeling. And then timers as well. Do you know, I've actually just purchased these. Because when I come home at night, the house is in darkness, and you could get timers. You get relatively inexpensive timers that hook up to Alexa, so I could actually tell Alexa to turn my lights on and off now. And you could use timers for outdoor lighting, indoor lamps. You could also have them come on, and they could gradually get brighter as well, and they don't have to be just straight on. As soon as the sunlight's fading, and it will actually, you could tell it to just do it with sunset, and as the sun sets, the light gradually gets lighter in your house. They're actually really, it's amazing what technology is like now, and they're fairly, again, inexpensive. They're not expensive things to have. And that creates that magical winter welcome into a home.
I mean,
definitely.
lighting's become so inexpensive now.
Yeah.
You could literally, you walk in it, and I could only think of B&Q, to be honest, because all the other places, Wix maybe as well was another one, and then you do have specialist lighting local businesses, or electrical lighting retailers, but it's a lot more inexpensive than what it used to be. It used to cost, I remember used to walk in, it cost an absolute blooming arm and a leg to buy. LED lighting was a fortune, and now it's so inexpensive to buy. Is it worth then taking more or less every single old bulb in your house and then just actually getting an LED, daylight, and possibly doing that? What's your thoughts on that, Craig? Is that a good ploy to actually just do? I mean, because it's not going to be much an investment really, but I tell you what, it's maybe going to pay good dividends, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a very inexpensive way to bring that warmth into your home to replace bulbs. I think you touched on it earlier, Jim, in terms of bringing the more natural light into your home in terms of with lighting and avoiding that clinical feel. I think a lot of modern lights can be quite clinical and do make you don't want your home feeling like a dentist waiting room. So I think by using this method, change the bulbs out. Amazon, great place. As you say, B&Q, really easy to get and relatively inexpensive, but a brilliant way to really capture that homely feeling.
It's quite good for video as well, Sophie, isn't it? It's quite good if you have the right lighting for the video, because you could sometimes get caught out and you walk in. I mean, I walked into commercial property what's got plan permission to convert it into a 3-bedroom apartment, but and the electricity has been switched off because they're paying a standard charge every month. So he thought, well, I'll just switch it off, because it's a blank canvas for someone in St. Monans. But the difficulty is when I got to when I turned the corner and went into one of the cupboards, it's completely dark.
Black,
I can't see anything at all. So I can't really show anybody, and I could just tell them, look, it's a walk-in cupboard. But the great thing is, if they look at the permission and the planning, they'll see what the cupboard is in respect to the rest of the floor plan, and that's kind of how I had to describe it. So it's probably quite essential, Sophie, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and it's. I mean, we get it all the time when we go to do our videos, and we'll always get asked by the sellers, do you want us to put the lights on? Do we need to have the lights on? And we get asked it all the time. And for us, it's just it's a non-negotiable. Lights on. It's showing you that full space and really giving you an idea. It's brighter. It's more, obviously, you can actually see what you're getting. As you said, obviously, there's a random room there somewhere, but we can't see it. That's no use to anybody, especially if we're going to the effort to do these full video walkthroughs. We need to actually see what we're videoing, and especially if it is somebody's virtual viewing. So all the lights on, the brighter the better. We need to see the space.
I have to chuckle quite a bit because I even endorse putting the lights on in the middle of summer when it's a bright day. And the reason I do that is, and some people actually go, why would you need to do that? I mean, the rooms, but what I've found before is when you're maybe doing a viewing and you're taking somebody into a room, and it's a particular room, if there is no natural light at the window, then it goes dark pretty quick. And then that's why I say, because you could get the sun going behind a cloud, and then all of a sudden the room goes dark when the person's standing in it, and then they begin to see what it's really like without proper lighting. This is why proper lighting is probably so important in the outset, even though it's the middle of summer or the middle of spring or whenever it is, when it's a bright day, and you're convinced that you don't need them. Personally, I think you should just put them on anyway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, like you say, as soon as you could just have one big cloud come across for 5-10 minutes while you're doing that viewing in that room, and it could spoil the whole feeling of the property because of that dull 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, it literally just transforms the house, doesn't it? And the atmosphere, and it gives the right impression. As I said before, you could have exactly the same room, but with just different lighting in it, and it could give you a completely different impression of your home, both inside and potentially outside as well. Especially if you're coming into a duskier night, and you're just getting to the point where you can manage to see the back garden. But the great thing is, the person that's got LED lighting in their back garden, and maybe the security lights, you can actually see what you're seeing. And it looks really nice. Whereas some people are just like, well, you'll just have to get your phone out. It's going round with your phone. It's like, what's that bit over there? Oh, that's just a bird's nest. And say, what's that bit? Oh, right. Oh, that's the dog that's done that. Maybe we should have cleaned that up beforehand. Well, we couldn't see it because there wasn't any light. So, but better still, it can all be done. I mean, all that could be done really in a single afternoon, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So, who's the green fingered to us?
Not me.
Hands up, who's green fingered?
Definitely not.
They're going to pick me again. I'm not green. I wouldn't say I'm green fingered, but I've been doing my garden this summer.
That's Richard. That's Richard. Right there. Richard. Everybody point at Richard.
Yeah, so obviously the garden, as you just said there, Jim, the garden is really important. And like myself and a lot of others, I'll get involved in doing the garden through the summer, and it looks really nice. You get to this time of year and you kind of just give up on it. Now, if you're listing your property, you really need to think about that. Do you know what? You've got into this place where there's like the soggy leaves are covering over your lawn and your garden. Do you know, all your perennial plants and things are having a bit of snooze, but they're all obviously went back underground or died off. Do you know, all the tree branches are bare, and the garden's really looking its best in these winter months. But that doesn't mean to have to say that all's lost on your garden. You could still have it nice and neat and tidy. There's a few tricks where you could add maybe a pop of colour, do you know, and a bit of cheer to show the buyers how delightful your garden still is throughout the year. Do you know, you want to demonstrate to them, although it's winter, it's still a good space to have. So if your garden furniture...
I just had, when you said add a bit of cheer, I just thought about 5 gnomes in a row. When somebody comes out the back garden, I'll go, way!
I'm not a big gnome fan, but I suppose it could. But I think the main thing about is your furnishings and things. A lot of people have got furnishings in the garden, and if they can withstand the season, then obviously dress them appropriately with the winterproof textiles, and you get these in whole bargains of things now. These cushions that are actually weatherproof, so they're not fabric as such. And you also get blankets and cushions and outdoor rugs and things as well now that withstand the rain and things as well.
It's quite difficult to actually maintain all that. It's what you said about the garden furniture and can it withstand the season. I've yet to find furniture that actually really can withstand a few seasons. Whatever they say, it's they insist that it's pressure treated, insist it's, you know, maybe treated with a special paint, but it still actually rots quite quickly. Yeah. So is it the case when you buy garden furniture, you're probably better to buy a better quality rather than actually just get the cheapest you can get? I'm not really sure about plastic as well, whether plastic works. It goes pretty, you know, grey and you know.
If you're leaving any furniture,
it goes a bit weird after a while.
If you go between the seasons where you've got the sun beating on it, and then obviously we go between sun and rain quite frequently in Scotland.
It's a storage thing as well.
It could take quite a lot of.
I tell you what I really liked. I remember going out the back garden at someone's house in Balcormy. Is it Balcormy? You know, over from the Balcormy Hotel in Crail. So out their back garden, it was a south-facing back garden, and I looked over and he had this big massive, you know, like a shed against the side of the wall, and he opened the shed and it was like, wait a minute, this is a kitchen. He had a kitchen built into it. And he had the television above on the worktop as well at the kitchen on the wall, and then he had a proper barbecue at the side as well. And then what he had as well was he had all the furniture that you could just pull out onto the patio. And it's a great way. I mean, literally, it was just a normal shed. And I thought, why did I not think of stuff? Well, I just don't think of stuff like that. I'm too clinical in terms of how I do things. So, you know, I mean, when it comes to imagination, maybe I'm non-existent. maybe I have to pull on other people for that. Or ideas is pretty simple about how you can do something, how you can get A to B in the most efficient way, and all the rest of it. But when it comes to creativity, I'm not really sure if I've got that gene. If that makes sense. So what other things can we do outdoors? Who's got a house? Sophie.
Yes.
What other things can we do outdoor? I mean, is it a case that we just have to regularly sweep up leaves all the time?
I would definitely keep on top of it, one, so that when you do have to do it, it doesn't seem such a mammoth task, but definitely keep on top of it. Not only is it, not great, but also it's a bit of a hazard because you do not want to be slipping on wet leaves, and then your viewer is got an injury and then they're no longer interested in your property. So also for safety reasons, get your leaves away and just keep on top of it. Especially, it just makes it more manageable. Again, as well,
leaving it too long probably rots your lawn as well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rots your lawn, and also it's also covered in space, especially if you've got such a big pile. It's maybe in the corners or it's taken over. It actually makes your your garden space look smaller, which is not what we want. We want to see as much of it as possible. So also don't be lazy and just rake it to one side. If you're going to go to the effort to do it, rake it, get rid of it. Don't just scoop it to one side. Just get it completely cleared so we can see. Yes, that's my top tip.
You've made a good point there, Sophie, I think, about the manageability of a garden. Do you know, if you've got people coming to look at a garden and it's covered in leaves and all dead trees and just lots of, they're going to look at it and think, oh, I've not got the time or the ability to look after a garden like this because it's in such a untidy and unmanaged mess. Do you know, whereas just raking up the leaves and keeping it tidy makes it look so much more manageable.
Sometimes it's the time of year, and I'm not really sure if you can do this because I'm not a knowledgeable gardener or anything like that. But I know in the summer you can't really trim back trees because you've got nests in there, and you're not meant to do that as part and parcel of the nature. And I think there's a legal precedent about it. You can't do that and disturb any birds' nests or anything. So maybe this is the time of year actually to take the opportunity and just lop the conifers you've got in the back garden that have grown far too high, or the landy as well. I've grown far too high. It's just gone out of control. Maybe this is the time of year to actually just start doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So front gardens then. Couple of evergreen boxes, cones, balls at the front door, stuff like that. Even seasonal blooms. Do you not get something like a Christmas tree plant or something?
Yeah,
you're right. Is that a thing? And you could put it outside, and it gives you that curb appeal. You touched on that in the beginning, didn't you, Richard?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and you get these the Christmas plant. You're thinking the one with the red leaves. Is that what you're thinking?
That's right.
Yeah. But you're right about your front garden as well. And if you're kind of, you don't need to be green fingered, but if you think about it, like I've got acers and things in the front, but they are seasonal and they go a really like nice orange colour and things, but then they go away. But then when they're not they're not in obviously season, I've got evergreens in between that. So like the front garden's always got trees in it as such, so all year round. So just the evergreen things is a good point to mix them in with your seasonal ones.
So then my thought process is then if your garden's not going to look as what it would in summer, clearly. But then is there an advantage then to start maybe putting out feeder stations to encourage birds? I mean, we've got squirrels, so we put out squirrel monkey nuts for the squirrels, and the squirrels are back and forward all the time. In fact, we caught a picture the other day of the squirrel sitting looking in the window, sitting next to the cat. And I just got it, but the squirrel was off before he even. And I thought, you wee bampot, you sat and did that until I took my camera out, and then you ran away. It was a classic. It's like the squirrel and the cat are sitting next to each other, and like cat was looking at the squirrel and was like, well, I'm no bored.
Yeah,
but it is right. The robin redbreast and stuff like that, especially at this time of year, it does give that enchanting seasonal scene. With the holly, holly is definitely a seasonal thing right now at this point in time. Would you not say?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the majority of places where you would be in Scotland, you're going to have some sort of nature close by, so attract it into the garden and have it there for viewers to see. I mean, most people will resonate quite well with nature and animals, and like you say, the squirrels and the robins and things. So if you could get them in the garden, do that, because it will create that feeling for viewers.
Yeah, this is then when it takes me on when we're talking about holly and stuff like that as well. This is the $64 million question. Christmas decorations, yes or no, Craig?
I knew you were going to say Christmas.
Christmas decorations, yes or no, Craig?
So I think it's a matter
of are we leaving? Are we doing it? Are we not taking them away? Should we remove them for photographs? Should we keep them for photographs, or what?
I think it's again down to personal opinion. But if you do love to celebrate your Christmas period by putting up decorations, you don't have to give them up to sell your home. to sell your home, to paint, as we've mentioned, we've spoken a lot today about painting a homely picture, and Christmas decorations can really do that. But at the same time, you've also got a few things to bear in mind when you're looking at putting your Christmas decorations up, because some people maybe can go a little overboard. So rather than putting up a massive tree that blocks windows, eclipses rooms, and becomes the centerpiece of the room, consider something a little smaller, a little more elegant, that can maybe sit in a corner, but still give you that feeling of Christmas, because it's still your home at the end of the day, but also gives buyers plenty of space to walk around and doesn't take anything away from the features of the room itself by being blocked out by a gigantic Christmas tree.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the one. A lot of people tend to go for massive Christmas trees, especially if they buy them every year, rather than having their own traditional one. And it does. You're right. It does block out the light, and that's where it can become overpowering. The decorations thing, the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the Griswolds. Is that the preferable route for decorations, or should we maybe think about toning it back at this time of year, when especially if you're trying to sell? What's your thoughts on it, Sophie?
Again, it's personal preference. Obviously, everybody has their colour scheme that they like to do. But multicoloured lighting and decorations, if it's, again, as Craig said, OTT, it kind of can take the focus away from the actual home, the room, the interior, the features, the character. If it's got character features, are they too busy looking at, are they too busy looking at the tree and maybe the garish decorations than actually looking at the ceiling roses and the open fireplace, the kind of focusing more on the Christmas tree that's not actually going to be there when they move in. So go for something maybe a little bit more dainty and more natural and a bit more subtle. But as Craig says, it is still your home, but maybe cut back on garish or maybe big character.
And then you've got the Santa blaring out in the corner going, yo ho ho ho, bang forward all the time. And it's like, and then eventually at some point in time you go, well, this thing's shut up. It can be off-putting, can't it? So I definitely think maybe, personally for me, I think you're only going to sell your house once, and you've chosen this time of year, and it's only going to be once you're going to have to do it. And it might be short-lived, because you might get an offer reasonably quickly. So you might just be able to go for broke after that. But I think if you're serious about selling your house, you're maybe right. You maybe do just have to bring it back a bit, and don't go for that National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the Griswolds, thing for their house. It's like you light it up and the whole of the town lights up at the same time, and then people's trip switches go in their houses because they've no power, because you've taken it all. So I think for me personally, it's not the right thing. As well, though, the key though out of this is the Christmas decorations then date your property. When you're doing video, so my advice then is probably try to get the video done and the photographs done pre-Christmas decorations, before you put them up, so they can be timeless. So if you do take it till after Christmas and it goes into the new year, because it is average time to sell a house is 2 months across Scotland. So if it does take the 2 months, then you've not lost that opportunity. And the fact that then you have to get a photographer out again. There's another cost that you've got to spend. Then you have to do videos again if you've got videos done of your property, and then potentially you've then got to then rejig everything to get it looking right. So you've done all that. You made all that extra work for yourself for what could have been. You could have just done it in the beginning and then put your Christmas decorations up. So it does give it a longer shelf life, and it avoids multiple visits.
Yeah.
So basically, what I would say is Christmas decoration, Sophie, yes or no?
I mean, we're not trying to be Scrooges here. It is still your home, but in short,
Bring your colours to the mast. Humbug.
In short, it can obviously add that sense of occasion to your viewings as well. It'll give an element of people moving into the home, potentially what their Christmas could look like in that home. But just obviously be mindful. Don't be garish. Give your home the space to shine. Don't let your decorations do all the talking and the shining. Let your home and its features. But yeah, that's Christmas
decorations. Yes or no, Richard?
I think you make a good point about the timeless thing. And I think even if you really love Christmas and like to have your house entirely decked out. I think just for the purpose, if you're selling, maybe this year rein it in a wee bit, have it a wee bit less, don't have it overpowering, and even maybe you could move it out the way for when listings and things are done, or even for viewings if you need to, unless you want to create that feeling if it is really close to Christmas time when you're viewing. But ideally, I would say not too much decorations.
Probably as long as it gives your home that space to shine anyway. I think that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? So,
yes.
My final thoughts on this, Richard. What's the one takeaway you would get from this show that you could tell somebody right now that you would say is the best piece of advice? The one takeaway.
I think when you think of this time of year and listing, think about, don't let the things like your garden and things let you down because you've just let them go. Do you know, make sure that they're in the right condition. Make sure you're making good use of the light at this time of year. Do you know, the sun's lower in the sky. We only have so many hours of daylight. Make sure you're making.
That's 2.
Yeah, I know. I could keep going as well. That's for me anyway.
Yeah, because you were going to go into another one, weren't you?
That was just kind of the light thing as well.
It's going to go. It's like the wheel. It's like you're going to use all the answers, and we're going to run out. Because Craig's hoping I'm going to ask him next. He's going, I've got one. Don't mention it, Richard, for God's sake. Craig, what's your one takeaway?
I think my one takeaway, as you've mentioned, there's a lot of tips in here in terms of different things you can do to really help amplify your home. What I would say, or my piece of advice would be, don't get focused on every single little detail. Pick out the ones that are really going to help your home shine, ones that are really going to be applicable to your property, some of which will already be there. Your home might allow light through. You might have cut back all the bushes throughout the summer and they haven't grown back. So pick out the points that are really going to help amplify your home, and don't focus on the picture as a whole. Pick out the details that are really, really going to help your property itself.
Good advice. Sophie?
Something I'm saying to clients just now is, because we get it all the time, but my garden's not in full bloom, I want to wait until it is. And I always say to clients, always say to clients that think about it, your buyer wants to be in for that spring, summer. They want to be in your home, ready for that moment, so they can then enjoy the garden in full bloom. So that's why you go to market now, so you can be enjoying it for spring, summer.
They don't care, do they? Because the reality is they're round to view the property as it stands in the photographs. And they've seen it in the video. They couldn't care less. They know it's going to be like that. It's not going to be a the garden isn't done. Well, newsflash, it was in the photographs in the video. Did you know? Look at that. That could have been the clue. It's clearly obvious that was the case. So that's a really good one to end on. Thanks very much for that. Thanks very much for coming on the show, guys. And that's it. Okay. Thanks very much for everybody tuning in. Thanks for your comments. Really appreciate it as well. If you've got anything else to add to that, please feel free to stick something in the comments or private message us or reach out, put my teeth back in, reach out to us on a personal basis. Until next time, guys, it's bye-bye from us.